Hello, everyone. I'm so excited. We have a bonus live stream today. So it is Friday morning here, 11. Oh, actually, it's noon. It's noon. And I'm here with Dr. Jeff O'Driscoll for an awesome conversation about owning your divine nature. And without further ado, let's get Dr. Jeff, as I like to call him, right here online. Hi, Jeff. How are you? Okay, so we'll just wait a moment. First of all, I wanted to say hello to everybody here. Jeff is not in a deep meditation. He's just having a bit of a camera freeze there, but he'll be back shortly, I'm sure. How are you? How is everybody? And in case you're wondering, I'm definitely going to be doing the Saturday live stream tomorrow. And today, the reason why I invited Dr. Jeff, and he might have to come back here. Is because we were on a telephone conversation and he was talking about what he was up to. And yeah, he'll ring me up. He was talking about what he's up to. And just before I keep going, hello, everybody. You guys, so many of you already here. Let me know if you can hear and see me okay. Because I did raise my microphone. Hopefully it's not too loud. I had a few people let me know about that. Anyways, back to Dr. Jeff. So Dr. Jeff, he was talking about that he was going to do a workshop on owning your divine nature. And I thought, I love that. Why don't you come on to my show and share with my audience a little bit about it? So you guys are getting a free lightweight version of his workshop that he's going to be offering in March. And I'm sure he'll be on momentarily here, but let's see the comments here. I'll go and find the comments. I feel really relaxed today because I took a little time off, a week off, and it felt really good to nurture myself, which is a great segue back into this conversation about owning your divine nature. Welcome back, Jeff. How are you?
Good. I missed the introduction, but I'm back now.
Well,
My Wi-Fi went totally dead for a moment, and I had to relog on.
no worries at all. It's really good to see you here. And I was just sharing with them how we had a telephone conversation that you're offering this workshop on owning your divine nature. And I thought, what a great thing to share on my channel because I'm really all about empowering my audience with the information to know that, the light is within you, God is within you, the kingdom is within you, and that you are co-creators with God. So I thought, this is perfect. So without further ado, go ahead, Jeff. How are you?
It's great to be with you, Sylvia. I love visiting with you, and thanks for having me back. This retreat is all about honoring and discovering who we are and stepping into our divine nature. The world would have us believe that we're something less than that. We live in this illusion that we're less than divine, and it's so empowering when we help people realize exactly who they are and own that, because then they make decisions from a place of power and self-confidence rather than what they hope they're going to become someday. They make decisions from what they already are.
Yes. Yes. And that's something that I think that you and I have in common. That's probably why whenever we think we're just going to chat for 5 minutes, it ends up being an hour and 50 minutes because we really resonate on this part. So, what led you to wanting to dig deeper in helping people find their divine nature?
As you know, for 25 years, I was an emergency physician. And sometimes when people died, I would see their souls leave their bodies and they would communicate with me before they left. I never spoke about these things for decades. And after I stopped seeing patients in the emergency department, finally started to share some of these experiences. And it connected me to a whole different way of looking at things. When I speak to people now, I help them realize how divine they are, that they're beings of eternal, unchanging, unmeasured worth, and that their worth doesn't change based on what they do. A lot of people are struggling with their self-worth, and I help them realize, no, your worth is fine. Your worth is infinite and eternal.
Absolutely. I love that. Now, some of you may or may not recognize Dr. Jeff, as I like to call him, but he is closely intertwined with his wonderful friend, um, the other Jeff. Go ahead and you can let them know. And the other Jeff had an NDE and ended up in an emergency room where Dr. Jeff worked. And so maybe you can just share a little bit of that with them.
Jeff Olson was involved in a horrible car crash a little over 20 years ago. And the car crash took the life of his wife of 10 years and his 14-month-old son and injured him so badly he almost didn't survive himself. He was flown to my emergency department. And when I went into the trauma room to see him, he was unconscious on the gurney, and his newly deceased wife was standing in the air above him, and she communicated with me. Jeff was unconscious at that time, so I wasn't able to speak with him. But about a month later, after he'd had a number of surgeries, including the amputation of his leg, I went to his hospital room. And that was when I learned that he'd left his body at the scene of the accident and met his deceased wife in the air. She said, "You have to go back and raise our other son," because they had a 7-year-old that was uninjured. And I shared with him my experience in the emergency department, and he and I have been good friends ever since.
And yeah, thank you so much for giving us that background. And that's how you're related to Jeff Olson. But you also have your own divine connections and experiences. And I wonder if you want to share just a little bit of background of what led you from being an emergency room physician, doctor, to now writing a book and having your whole website is all around helping others. That's your whole motto. And what led you in this direction?
One way to get to my website, in fact, is simply type in helpingsoulsheal.com. That's one of my domain names.
I love it.
Um, I didn't think much about this until I started sharing my story, and people started to ask me this very question about how it started. Where did it begin for you? And when I really dove into it and started thinking about it, I think it began when I was just shy of my 12th birthday. My older brother was killed in a farm accident. And he's come to me a number of times since then
Mm-hmm.
and taught me a great many things. And sometimes when you sometimes when the veil fully closes. And so I think that's part of what opened me up to these kind of experiences. He spoke to me when I was a teenager. I think he saved me from what might have been a fatal car crash. He spoke to me as an adult several times, and he still comes to me today. And I think that's what kind of opened me up to have these experiences with divine beings.
I was speaking with Trisha Barker yesterday because this is related. And by the way, thank you, David. Thank you for the super chat. Two super chats, by the way. So I really appreciate that. And I don't know if you know Dr. Jeff, but the super chat is people showing their appreciation. People are giving us lots of love and loving having you here. Yeah. So I was talking to Trisha Barker because she said it's time now that we do the NDE annual conference, and I mentioned that I had just spoke to you, and she said, well, you guys probably get on so well because you both, neither one of you has had an NDE, yet you have had so many spiritually transformative experiences and very in tune. I thought that was really nice of her to say that, and she'll be reaching out to you, I'm sure, to go on to the conference. Probably we shouldn't have told you ahead of time, but everyone now knows. Yeah, so basically we have had those experiences, and I feel like when I'm speaking with you here and when we're on the phone, that it's almost like we're kind of like brother and sister in the sense where I kind of know what you're going to say next, and I kind of feel what you're feeling, and you get so excited about my experiences. Like when I got home from Sedona, you were one of the first people I talked about meeting Jesus, and it felt so good just to share that with you, so thank you.
Thank you. Um, I haven't had a near death experience. I've had what are called shared death experiences. And I like to use a physical metaphor to help people recognize what I'm talking about. In a near death experience, if you will, imagine it's like this curtain that separates us from the divine world, from the spirit world, from the beyond, if you will. People that have near death experiences tend to step through that veil and then come back. People that have shared death experiences like mine might be standing near that veil. And when someone passes through it and it's held open for a while, some of that light and glory from the other side gets to splash back onto you. And if it's held open long enough, you might even look inside and see someone you recognize, even though these things happened to me when I was perfectly awake and alert and healthy. I wasn't on drugs. I wasn't having a seizure. I wasn't anoxic or any of those things. But I think I was happened to be in the proximity of somebody passing through the veil and back frequently in the emergency department, and that's why I had some of these experiences, I believe.
Mm-hmm. You know, I think that we can do this. This is kind of like a cozy conversation. I've got my water, orange juice, and coffee. I just want to be laid back today. And I feel like, speaking of owning your own divine nature, I feel like being your authentic self and stepping into your truth and being your whole self all the time is so liberating. um, Regarding near death experiences, I feel like this might be a fun thing to share. When I go to the other side in my sleep or I'm speaking to people who have deceased, I don't see any difference between me. Like, that's the place I'm going when I pass on. Maybe there are other dimensions in, in the entire, not maybe, I'm almost convinced 99.9% that there are other dimensions that we could go to and experience. However, I feel like when I go to sleep, I'm stepping into a different realm. My consciousness is just seamlessly moving into a different realm, and I think I'm not afraid to die as a result, but we'll wait and see when my time comes.
I've had those kind of experiences when I sleep, not as frequently as some people have them and not as frequently as I would like, but I can relate with what you're saying because I have had those experiences. And when I wake up from those kind of experiences, I have a knowledge that it's something more than a dream, that it was something profound and transformational, and that I learned something. And frequently, as I go through my day or through the next days of my life, I'll have something that confirms what I may have seen in the dream, and I realize that it was just.
So while his internet is cutting out, I can answer some of your questions. This gives me a chance to take a break, and he'll be back. The Wi Fi, anyhow, yes, this is a live show. Yes, it's a bonus one. It was spontaneous, so I hadn't planned it too ahead of time. I put out a notification about 3 hours ago that we were going to go live. Jeff and I spoke on the telephone, I believe it was last night or the night before, and I said, come on to my show and share this with everybody. So if I'm not answering as much, I'm just trying to pay attention. Are you with me, Jeff? So,
I am. I think I've heard everything you said.
oh, good.
It's disappointing that the internet isn't cooperating today. It says I have a great signal, so I don't know what the problem is. But um, I love what you share about dreams. I have dreams sometimes, and they're profound, and they're much more than dreams, but I don't have them as often as I would like.
We need to create a new word for the vocabulary because I feel like it's not a dream and it's not a lucid dream. A lucid dream, I've had those where it's really like, you dream that you're dreaming and you're in a dream and you see things, and that's really cool. I like having lucid dreams. But then there's a different category where you are absolutely somewhere else. And oftentimes when I'm there, I'm like, okay, I get this. Like, I realize that one example, for example, that I've heard a near death person say, I will be somewhere on a mountaintop and somebody will be communicating with me a very profound wisdom. And then suddenly I'll be like, I should be cold right now, but I'm not cold. And yet I know I'm in my bed at home. So all of this realization happens all at once during that time of a dream. And also, I've had it Anyways, I didn't mean to go into my dreams. Please go
No,
ahead.
no,
And
that's
I really
great.
want you to bring to my audience what you have to share. Could you let us know what you're going to be teaching in your divine or owning your divine nature workshop?
We're going to talk about our infinite, unchanging worth. Worth is not dependent on external things. Worth is not dependent on what you do. Contrary to the rest of the world saying that you are what you do, in actuality, we are what we are. And what we are is divine beings of infinite, unchanging worth. And when we understand that, if we go out on an endeavor to do something and it doesn't turn out the way we hoped, we don't think, oh, I'm a failure because this endeavor failed. Instead, we think, I'm a divine being of infinite worth. I made a decision that had an unfortunate outcome. I'm going to make a different decision next time, but I'm still who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And so you walk in confidence and power, realizing that your worth is not in peril.
Yes. Yes. It took a long journey for me. I'm just writing down or just pulling over what some people are saying. Jim said, I love that we are what we are. Anyways, it took a long time. Thank you, Jim. It took a long time for me to realize my own self-worth because in the beginning, I believed that I was what my parents thought I was, or my family thought I was, or my school thought I was, or my job thought I was. And I even started to buy into that and believe that that's what I was. But after a while, I hit a point where, for me, being a sensitive individual, not just regular sensitive, but I realized that, something's gone wrong here. I went on the wrong track and I need to get on the right track. It doesn't matter what people say what you are or what they think you are, whether it's good or bad, by the way. It's who you believe you are.
Yes. And we frequently learn that those things we think are wrong tracks aren't wrong tracks at all. They're the right track all along, and we just needed to realize it. If we learned something from our experience, it wasn't a failure. Um, and so, another big part of being who we are and stepping into our divine nature is to learn to balance the notion of becoming with actually being. Sometimes we get so caught up in what we think we're becoming, we're afraid to be what we are. But you can only experience God in the present. You can think about spiritual experiences you've had in the past and be grateful for them, and you can such experiences in the future and look forward to them. But you can only experience God in the now.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's good. He's got a pause in the internet. Here, just let me answer David's question while you're here. I could see you smiling. You could hear us. So David said, "Hi Sylvia, listening today. Is Jeff's message the same as what Jesus tried to teach us, and how similar?" So what I'm about to say is a personal opinion. And maybe you can chime in too. I really love, I talk about Jesus all the time, and he's an example. And I think what Jeff is trying to convey is that he's trying to strengthen the light within souls so that they recognize their own to own their own divine nature so that you too can be a light. And I think it's absolutely acceptable, wonderful, amazing that we look to Jesus as an example. But the message, I do suppose that the message is the same, is that, love yourself is what Jesus said. And this is what Dr. Jeff is saying. And this is what I'm saying. And stepping into your own authentic gifts, just yourself, who you're being. And you keep saying the word being, and I'm smiling, Dr. Jeff, because I 100% agree with you. The being part is so important because you can say, do, act, all kinds of things, but who you are being is the most influential. And that's kind of what I meant a couple of minutes ago when I was doing this job and I thought that it was such a great job. And everybody kept saying, oh, this is, you're so lucky to have this business and this job. But inside, I wasn't being my full authentic self. Therefore, I never did feel good enough. And when you reach that point where you understand and connect with your own divine nature, I think that you can walk freely and say, I'm good enough, no matter what. No matter what.
Yes, I totally agree. And uh, since one of your viewers brought up Christ and you've mentioned Christ, I'll reference him. He told his followers to be perfect. He did not say become perfect. He said be perfect. I think he was telling them to step into their present perfection and be.
Yeah.
When he claimed to be a son of God, people accused him of blasphemy, and his answer was, "Wait a minute, you're divine too. You are God's," he said. When
Yeah.
he said, "I am the light of the world," he then got up on a mountain on the Sermon on the Mount, and he told everybody listening, "You are the light of the world." And when he came walking on the water, he didn't say to Peter, "Look how great I am walking on water." He said, "Peter, come walk with me." And Peter did it. And at the end of his ministry, after people had witnessed so many miracles, his response to them was, "Greater things than these shall you do." Every time he turned around, when people were trying to put him on a pedestal and make him different, he was saying, "No, no, you're just like me. Do what I'm doing. Let's be one." His great prayer to the Father was, "Be one with me as I'm one with the Father. Let us all be one together."
I'm going to do something funny, Dr. Jeff. That was so good what you said. Thank you for saying that. And privately, I wonder why so many people struggle with owning their own divine nature and they feel bad about owning it and they want to. Okay, I notice that people stay stuck in this feeling of not good enough. And when you own it, what you do is you become the light and you share that responsibility with Jesus to share the light. And even if you didn't believe in Jesus, you still are bringing positivity and healing. The reason I say that is because you know it's important that we understand that this message helps us universally, no matter who we are. It's not exclusively for any particular group of people, but when we are loving and when we are authentic and when we are ourselves and when we share our talents and we put our best foot forward, this is beneficial for everybody.
I agree. Most of the messages I get are much more universal than one religion.
Yeah.
I was getting ready to speak to a large group of people a couple of years ago, and I asked this very seriously. I asked, and it came to me very clearly. Tell them they're enough. Tell them they're divine. Tell them they're loved. Has nothing to do with religion.
Yeah, exactly. So, whichever side of the fence that you're on, I think that the underlying current and message is to step into glowing and being. You can glow up in this experience and make things better. I want to even go as far as like one of my missions are to empower people and to bring heaven on earth. And I do truly believe that we can do that. And that really has to do with no particular religion, but a desire to make this environment and this dimension the best it can be. And I truly do believe that we can do it together. So, what does it mean when people believe in their divine nature? It means that they can step into this hand holding and vibration raising environment and dimension where we can all be a lot happier no matter what. And that's why I think your work is so important because you're leading with that. You're leading with showing people and teaching people that they can connect and be with their divine nature. Why do you think that it's so important?
The reason it's so important to recognize and step into our divine nature is because when we realize who we are, then we realize who everyone around us is. And we realize that we're always next to God, whether we're sitting in church or in the gutter. And then we treat people differently. And when we realize our divine nature, we learn to love ourselves and love others. And I think that's why we're here.
Yeah. Wow. Uh, we hadn't talked about this recently, but I think we've been moving in the same direction because I think that God is within one another and that we will only feel the full scope and scale of God's love when we all connect because God is in all of us. So when we connect and all create that light, we are going to feel so happy and joyful and backed up, like someone's got my back on every direction, no matter where I am. I like your analogy, whether you're in the church or in the gutter. The fact is that's why that's why Jesus came, and not only just that, but that's what we can be for each other. My problem with mentioning any kind of reference to a specific religion is that I think people think that that was good for before, but I think what you're saying and what we're talking about is good for right now.
I agree. Um, the You know this story. I've shared it before, but I'll share it very briefly. I was in the emergency department one day, and I was taking care of a homeless gentleman who had all kinds of substance use issues. He had nothing of the world. He had long hair and a scruffy beard, and he was in rough shape. And his feet were in bad shape because he'd been walking around in the snow with holes in his shoes. And I sat down at the foot of the gurney and I washed his feet. And when I washed his feet, the veil was drawn back and I saw who he was. And I was in the presence of the divine. And this was a person who had nothing that the world defines as success, and yet he was divine. I thought I was there to help him, and he ministered to me. He was there to teach me. And it changed the way I view every soul since that day. Because, like you said, we are all divine. It is in all of us. And what we're struggling to do is to recognize who we are and who everyone around us is so that we can behave better.
Well, in defense of all the people who are struggling, I would like to say that if I, by the way, if I seem at all distracted, it's because I'm 100% involved, but I'm also involving the chat. Shelley G came as a moderator too. I think what I want to say about that is that we are in defense of the people. We are taught that we need to be humble. We are taught that, basically, if you're succeeding in any significant way, that you are bad, essentially. And it's kind of it's a sad state of affairs, and I'm not sure where that energy comes from or where that undercurrent comes from, but I don't subscribe to it, and I don't recommend anybody subscribe to it. And I think when they're talking about humility, like for example, you, Dr. Jeff, you are a medical doctor. You are, you do a lot of, you're an author. You have a lot of reasons to subscribe to, I don't know how to say it. You could think that people could think highly of you in comparison to someone else. Yet you have the humility and the grace and the love that shines through no matter who you're talking to. And that's the kind of humility that we're talking about. But the fact that you went to a certain school and became a doctor and have that esteem, that's a good thing. That's great. I'm so happy that you did that. And your contribution to the world is significant. And I feel everybody should contribute in their own unique way with their own unique talent and effort versus shutting down and saying, I'm no good, and that kind of thing. So, what are the symptoms of people and what are the actions of people, just so everyone is clear on it, that feel that they're not enough?
I was up all night one time taking care of a critically ill patient in the ICU. I
Mm-hmm.
was exhausted. I went into the call room and I laid down and took a short nap, and then I came back out to check on my patient. And as
Mm-hmm.
I was sitting at the nurse's station, I looked up and I saw a woman from the housekeeping department of the hospital go into my call room and clean it and make the bed. And I was so profoundly grateful because what she was doing was important and it enabled me to do my job. What she did was every bit as important. Um, I had a friend not too long ago post on Facebook that they were feeling guilty because they'd grown up in a privileged home and they'd been taught religiously all their life that they were a part of a favored group, an elite, elect group, which is a lot of what scripture talks about. And I wrote her back and I said, you know, it's okay to be part of an elite, elect, special group as long as you recognize that every other person in the world is part of that same elite, elect, special group. See, it's not pride to acknowledge your divine nature and step into it. Pride is refusing to recognize the divine nature of others, that
Mm-hmm.
they are just like you.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So then you could have the argument, and just to create some dynamic conversation and look at all angles, you could create the argument that some people just refuse to recognize it and almost become a burden on society when through their actions, like how can I say this in the most diplomatic way? If someone is insistent on hurting other people or taking from other people and doing these things, it's hard for the general populace to understand that there's the divine nature in that person, and they're not they don't want to be so generous and supportive of that individual. And I think you and I both recognize that they also have divinity in them. And I can tie this in with a question someone had, and please chime in as well, Dr. Jeff, that our success is inevitable, but it's a matter of how long do we want to wait until everybody recognizes that we're all divine and that everyone comes together versus moving away from one another, and everyone sees that we need to support um, all members of our society. Even for me, look, I do struggle with that too, but I keep reminding myself I can't, heaven can't be here unless we're all in it together. I mean, it can to some degree, but fully, the full manifestation of goodness and heaven, the way I see it. And that's my definition of heaven, is that we have a beautiful place to live, and we all love each other and got each other's backs, have each other's backs. So I think that's difficult. What is your take on people who are really challenged with finding that they are enough and that they have divinity in them, and they insist on doing the opposite?
Well, people that do really opposite things, real difficult things for us to expand is a challenge sometimes. Um, Sometimes when I'm speaking about loving other people, people they get really concerned if I'm not talking about some harsh by the book judgment. They want people to be judged. And they'll ask me, well, what about so and so? They're a really bad person, a mass murderer or something like that. And then I realized one day the question they're asking has nothing to do with the mass murderer. The question has everything to do with the person asking it.
Oh
What
my.
they're really saying is, how bad does somebody have to be before it's okay for me to hate them? I know God said love everybody, but I don't want to love everybody. How many people do they have to kill before it's okay for me to not love them, for me to hate them? The question's all about them, not the offender.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe that you're saying this. I came to the same conclusion when people ask me. They'll say, well, what about the person who did this? And what about the person who did that? And I'm thinking, first of all, why are we thinking about that? A. And B, yes, it is about that person, or perhaps what they've thought or entertained in the mind, Or again, what you said, until I don't want to love that person. And yeah, that's a very fascinating rabbit hole to go down, because I know we might not be able to do that today. But yes, I do agree with you on that. And what a great point. Let me, if it's okay with you, Dr. Jeff, just read some of the comments. Okay, so David Nellum says, great thought, doctor. And David Johnson said, Hitler question mark. And we'll go to him in a moment. And then Jim says, I don't need more things. I have more than I can use. I just want to do what I love and give away some of the excess. Okay, good. And then, yeah, so, and Shelly G says, Christ in you. I'm going to say a few names. Louise is here, and Shelly G is here, and Pip is here, and Shauna is here, and David Ramsey is here, Gwen's here. Yeah, I just wanted to shout out. So everyone brings up Hitler as the poster boy of, one of the worst people, or his activities were the worst. I really don't want to go too far in there for a number of reasons. One, I'm not sure if people realize this, but all of the words in the algorithm are used in your video and distributed accordingly. So I want to make sure this good news gets out to a lot of people versus being restricted. But I think we pick people to be our whipping person, and we want to put all of humanity's sins onto one person or one group. And I'm not too happy with that concept, because since and prior to that individual we're talking about, there have been atrocities from all different groups, to all different nations. So when we do that, what we're really doing is we're saying, hey, let's all heap on to this one individual all of the bad things that we could possibly imagine. That's not to say he didn't do those things. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that humanity as a whole energetically is responsible for one another. And how does it get to the point that these things occur? That's the question.
And it's important to remember, too, that no matter how despicable the individual we're talking about seems to be, the way we view them and the way we respond to them has nothing to do with them. Whether we choose to forgive them, whether we choose to love them, has everything to do with us, nothing to do with them.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I would never justify or rationalize or say what some people do is good or right, because I'm not at a point in my path where I can understand it and say those things. But how I feel about them is irrelevant to what they did. My job is to love them and forgive them, and I don't have to wait for them to ask forgiveness to forgive them. It's about me, not them.
Oh, wow. You know what? You just keep serving up some great stuff, Dr. Jeff, and you're really bringing it. And if we all had that response and responsibility towards mankind, boy, would there be a ton of healing. So when people are in your workshop, which I think I want to sign up if it's on a day that I could do it. When people are in your workshop, what can they expect to come away with in their
I
heart?
just say, yeah, I'm sorry, say that again.
What can people expect to come away with in your workshop, and like what is at the heart of what you're doing right now with this workshop?
One of the key points that people are going to walk away with is they're going to realize that mortality is on the divine path. We're served up this notion that being mortal makes us less than divine somehow, and that making mistakes is bad. But the whole point of being on earth is to be mortal. The whole point of being here is to make mistakes. If we were not going to make mistakes, there's no point in coming. So it's important to realize that being mortal does not make you less divine. Your mortal experience is on your divine path, and it's okay to be mortal. That's why you're here.
Nice. I like that a lot. And I think that that exact concept of being mortal makes us feel less divine. And what I hear you saying is this is part of being a spiritual being? Is this experience that we're experiencing right now, is it? Actually, why not? Why not just say this? Why not? You know, I have been having a line of thought, and usually when this happens, it's a divine download, and I've been experiencing this concept that our spiritual self, our being, apart from this physical being, is almost pushing itself in to the physical to manipulate the body so that it goes through the motions and the experience. It's almost as though it's not like, oh, we're in this body, oh, we left this body, as much as we're impressing upon the nature of material things to experience what it feels like. It's like, when I touch something, I can feel it's cool, and I can taste it and have that experience. And I feel like our spirit is impressing upon this. So we are spirits. We are that part of co-creator. We're just pushing into this material world so that we can feel and experience things. And in part, just like, I know this is completely unrelated, but it's coming to me. It's just like when we start a business, or we learn how to ride a bike, or any of the things we do, we can expect a degree of failure, falling off of your bike, learning experiences. And perhaps that's part of the joy or growth of being a spirit. What do you think?
I agree completely. I have a blog post on my website about this very thing, and I liken it to a deep sea diver. And years ago, in one of those Navy deep sea canvas suits with the heavy brass and copper helmet, and when they're in the suit, they're perfectly awake and alert and alive, and they can see, but their vision's obscured by the portals in the helmet. And they can't hear the person standing next to them the way they did when they're out of the suit. They can't move as quickly or as easily as they did before they put the suit on. But the suit is protecting them when they go underwater.
Mm-hmm.
It saves them, and and it's very analogous, in my opinion, to the body that we're dressed in as spirits. It impedes our vision, it limits our hearing, it slows our movement, but it's important because it teaches us things. It enables us to do what we do in this realm. So that veil that I talked about that gets separated when people come and go in this life, that veil is our body. We are wrapped in our veil. In fact, for your Christian listeners, Paul himself said it in Hebrews. He said, the veil is the flesh of Christ. That was his veil. Our body is our veil. And it causes us limitations, but it also teaches us things, and it protects us in this realm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Exactly. And it allows us to experience this realm, this tangible realm. Ah, what a great conversation. Like, I'm so grateful that you're here each and every time. I wish you could come on like every month.
I
So
can.
yeah, speaking of which, we have one other live stream which I think is in my membership, but we have another actual video which is available to you at any time if you want to watch it, a previous conversation. But since then, I feel that you've even deepened and created an even wider imprint on this earth with what you're doing. And I want to thank you for helping people. And we've got about 15 minutes left, and I just want to ask you if there's any other particular messages that you want to share with the people, and how they can today start transforming and becoming divine in their own nature.
Yes. I told you about when I got that download that said, you are enough, you are divine, you are loved. A few days after I got that download, a few days after I'd spoken at that group, I was going to meet with a private client, and somebody who was a very accomplished public speaker told me I need to adapt my message to my audience to make it something they can relate with and hear and stuff. And I
Mm-hmm.
was pondering, how do I make my message adapt to my audience? And the same voice that gave me those things came back and said, I gave you the message. I'll bring you the audience. So you are enough. You are divine. You are loved. Don't ever forget that.
Okay, excellent. And so, one more, just to sort of dig in there. What about those people who just are listening right now and thinking that this is not possible? I'm not enough. And if I was enough, my life would be so much better and people wouldn't be bothering me and life wouldn't be bad and the circumstances around wouldn't be what they are. And how could you possibly um, say that we are enough and that, you are divine?
Um, as you know, a lot of people don't know, but you know this, Sylvia. Spirit clubbed me over the head for months to try and get me to share some of my experiences. So I finally started sharing them as blog posts on my website. I share them on social media as well, but they exist on my blog post on my website. And any of your viewers can go to my website. It's jeffodriscoll.com. There's over 50 blog posts there that I've posted in the last couple of months. And they have a lot of my messages in short, sweet bites.
Oh, good. Okay, that's that. Okay, so what I'll do is after this, I'm gonna go and grab your website URL and I'll post it below. And I want to thank everybody for all of their sweet comments. And I do want to thank David again for the super chats. And I wanted to say I'm glad that you all joined me on this spontaneous live stream that we did on a Friday. I will be here on Saturday, tomorrow at 11 a.m. as usual. But I want to give a great big thank you. Thank you to Dr. Jeff for coming here today and for sharing. And if you do want to participate in a deeper and more significant way, I will also post that link down below within 5 minutes. So as you may know, when you do a live stream, it takes a moment to process, but you can come back to the same one, same page and same video, and you can get that link. Yes, what day is it? Is that right?
And the retreat is on the 13th of March.
Yes.
You can find a link on my website or on Facebook. If you can't come in person, you can buy it virtually if it's being recorded. And people that come in person, if they want, they can go to dinner with me and continue the conversation after the retreat over dinner.
What and where is this? Shelly G just posted your web address, and I'm assuming that there's a link to go to your workshop there as well.
Yes, yeah. It's this intensive workshop retreat. It's all day retreat and dinner afterwards. And there's a link on upcoming events on my website that'll take you to where you can buy tickets,
Okay,
virtually or in person.
where is this in person? Just so they know.
In person, it's in Utah. It's a little bit north of Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, I wish I could go. Maybe I may be able to go, and then we can all have dinner there. All right. Well, listen. Thanks again, and I hope I mentioned everything that was important to mention, Dr. Jeff, and I hope that I answered your questions, the chat people. Thank you, and we'll see you again tomorrow. Thank you, Dr. Jeff.
Thank you.
Have a great evening.